So I mentioned that there was an extra game in Kirby's Dream Land, so let's go through that. Extra game is pretty tough, actually. While the levels are basically the same design-wise, it's the enemy placements that are different. So like these guys immediately jump at you now. Before they would just slowly walk at you. There's a lot of changes in enemy placements that are just different enough that, like, if you remember what they were in the original game and you try and react to what you think is coming, you will get hit instead. There's also just a lot more enemies. Like, they're just always coming for you. Like, on a first playthrough of this, it's actually kind of wise to just kind of inch forward instead of just holding right, because a lot of the time you're just going to run face first into an enemy. Also, some of the bosses have new behaviors. While this guy, you know, throws bombs at you more frequently now. Well, whoops, I killed him. Sometimes he can actually dash at you very quickly, which can catch you by surprise really easily. Also, some of the enemies are visually different now. A lot of the Bronto Berts are these dark-colored ones now. I forget what their names are. But the new versions of enemies from the normal version of the game are generally just more aggressive, like they're fast and they home in on you. Ooh boy. I recorded this a couple times, hoping, like, you know, it's tough but manageable, thinking like I'll be able to get through this with no deaths, and they ain't happening. It's rough. One of the other big changes is that a lot of stuff, not everything, but a lot of stuff in the new game version, or extra game version, does more damage. Whereas before, if you ran into anything, you know, you would get like 1 square of damage, maybe 2, if you like hit spikes or something. But here, there are some things that can take 3 squares of your health off, like right away. One of those things being Gordos, these spiky dudes. A lot of the time running into them is going to take off 3 squares of your health, which, been getting hit before, that means, you know, you might just die. And yeah, Wispy Woods, harder because half of the stuff that drops from them now are Gordos. And sometimes, the Gordos drop from random points, and so sometimes where they drop from is kind of bad because, you know, I got hit a couple times there. And it was mostly just because, like, I need to jump over this Gordo now, but also Wispy Woods was, you know, puffing air at me, so lots of stuff like that is gonna continue to hit me right directly in the face. Thankfully, all of the healing items are still in the same place as before, so that'll knowing where all that stuff at can make this stuff a little easier. And also, I went through this area before. There are several other doors, though. I'm gonna take a different route this time, because it makes a room coming up in a little easier to deal with. Also kind of funny that, in the original Kirby game, you don't really swim, you just kind of walk in water. That was something they wouldn't add until later, like actual swimming. But yeah, there's a hyper candy here, or whatever it's called. It makes you invincible. And that means I'm invincible in this room, which is nice, because these skulls are hard to suck up. A lot of the time they just won't get sucked up, and then they just run straight into your dang face, so better just be invincible for that part. And lo and la. Faster. Sure, they kick blocks at you still, but also they kick Gordo at you immediately afterwards, so you gotta be careful with that. It's kind of funny, like, with the way the bosses are changed up, this part here is actually harder than the actual boss fight with them at the end of this stage, because their changes are a lot more minor than it is here. Well, it's, generally smart to go in here because there's a soda, can restore 2 blocks of your health, and there's some curry to get a power-up, but it's, not worth it when you forget to not stay in the middle and then immediately take a hit. Oops. Kind of a net loss there. Still good for here, though, when there's a lot of enemies that just charge right at you, because, one thing I didn't point out is that, when you are sucking up enemies in this game, there's a little bit of a delay immediately after, like, Kirby gets them in his mouth. There's a short delay before you can actually spit them back out. So you kind of have to time, like, judge distances of enemies, because if you suck up an enemy when another one's coming at you already, there's a decent chance that you won't be able to spit them out in time and they'll just run right into you. And like I said, this actual fight, boss fight with these two is easier than when you just meet them in the middle of the level, because the only change to them really is that they move a little bit faster. They never push Gordos around or anything though, which feels like they would have made that change here when they made it earlier, but nope. It's still really easy, just jump up behind them, suck up a block. Not much else to it, really. These characters, you know, I detailed before that they've had their own games. These characters are also just recurring characters in the Kirby games. They show up a decent amount. They were in the anime, too. Kirby right back at ya. Alright, halfway done. The first two levels, while tough, are still pretty manageable. Float Islands messes me up a pretty decent amount, though. There's some meaner changes to enemy placement in this level. Ugh. Also, those crabs, or those coconuts, are more dangerous now, because before, if you got too close to the coconut, it would just fall on your head. And if it directly made contact with you, you got hurt. Now they actually explode on contact with the ground, so even if you're a little bit far away from them, they can still hurt you. And yeah, there's some good instances of new enemy placement. That guy immediately pops out of that tree after you've gone past it, so he's behind you. That cannon that just flies out of the ocean and starts spraying bullets everywhere. And yeah, at this point, the coconuts are easier to deal with by just, you know, blowing puffs of air at them. You don't want to try and risk, like, baiting them into falling and then getting away. Also, what I was going to say earlier about the crabs is it can be difficult to suck them up, because after they're done shooting their little beam from their eye, they actually, like, block. And if they're blocking, you can't suck them up. Another change, that coconut. If you recall, while playing this on the normal version of this game, that coconut falls on the left side, and they're totally banking on you, just, like, still assuming it's coming from the left side, so that when you go to the right, you immediately get hit with the coconut. Oof. Also, all the 1-ups are still in the same spots, thankfully, so... while 1-ups weren't really needed the first time around, now they're actually, you know, you actually want them. Because there is a chance of getting a game over here, especially in the first playthrough, when you're not expecting all these changes to enemy placement. Alright, this screen can give you some trouble, too. First, that spicy curry's a trap. This cannon shoots way too frequently to grab it easily. Like, it's possible, but it's just difficult. And, yep, more flying enemies coming in from behind you very quickly. That guy flies in real quick, and if you don't know he's gonna happen, you're probably gonna get hit by him, too. Oh, thank God there's still a decent amount of sodas, though. It's funny about the 1-ups in this game. Well, a lot of games have moved on from you know, whoa, look at that thing, having like a life system. Like even the latest Mario, like there are no longer lives. You just always restart from your last checkpoint. And don't have to worry about getting a game over. Kirby is still holding on to the live system, which is strange because Kirby is always, you know, except for optional content, has always been games that are very kid-friendly, you know, family-friendly. Like, anybody can play them. They're very easy to get into, and while there are challenges in the games, you know, there's always ways to get through, like, the main game pretty easily. Also, this boss can be real rough on Extra Game, because he, just fast, lots of cannonballs. The cannonballs just have really squirrely movement. It's just, they're hard to avoid. But even the latest Kirby game is still using a live system. It just dumps them on you constantly, like, in Star Allies for the Switch. Like, by the end of the game, I had nearly 99 lives, and I think I only died 2 or 3 times from accidentally falling into a pit. Alright, this level, the hardest one, by far. There is some stuff in here that always manages to get me. And some really, mean changes to a specific enemy type we'll see a little bit later on. These guys basically the same. They're not any more aggressive. They do throw in these flying cat head things. I don't really know what they are. They just kind of move around in circles very quickly. But these enemies, when they drop, now their umbrellas are enemies too, and they home in on you. It can mess you up really quick when you're not expecting the umbrellas to be, you know, things going after Kirby as well. Like, oof, ow. Lord. Yeah, the game just loves to dump a huge amount of enemies right in front of the doors. Also, yeah, these guys have, the Sir Kibbles have been replaced by these guys, who I cannot remember their names at the moment. But yeah, they throw their boomerangs more quickly. They go like twice the distance. They're rough, because they can hit you even when they're still mostly off-screen. Also, this area, enemies can fly at you really quick! Woo! That's why I'm inching forward and just inhaling, thinking one of these guys might be coming at me any second, but thankfully only... I don't know if it's because of the way I was scrolling the screen. It may have been. But generally, more of those flying guys come at you really quick. Like, there's that guy in the middle of the screen, then shortly after there's a guy really high up, and then there's a guy at ground level who comes at you so fast, it's real easy to get hit by him. By the way, when I mentioned, like, you know... at some point, I always end up dying on extra game mode. It's almost always this level. This level... it just eats away at my health slowly. And also some people point out in the comments for the, my playthrough, just the normal game mode of this game. There are some other areas I didn't show. There are a couple hidden doors, in which, I will be going back into them this time. Like here, there's a hidden door. And this room has some pretty nice stuff in it. I mean, you know, it gives you the power-up. Gives you some healing items, both a soda, and it drops a Maxim Tomato on you. But then immediately after the Maxim Tomato, there's a bunch of stuff that just... it hurts. Oof. Like that. The power-up doesn't really last the entirety of the room unless you really book it. So, yeah, it's easy to get hit right at the end there. One of the dangerous things is, like, you know, you don't have to rapidly tap the button to, like, shoot out these puffs of air. You can just... and then that guy shoots bullets at you, and he never does it at any other point in the game? Man. But if your power runs out and you're still holding down the button to shoot the puffs of air, you'll suck in all those enemies instead, and you'll just fall to your death because you don't have enough time to spit them back out before you fall off the screen. But yeah, Kracko Jr., he's completely different this time around. I mean, he has a very obvious pattern here, but it takes a little bit to learn it, and the timing on it can be a little strict here to actually, like, hit him with the bomb. There's only a small window when he's low enough for the bomb to hit it. You gotta jump pretty far. But yeah, this is when I was practicing this, because I haven't played extra game mode since I was like 7 or 8 or something. So when I got here, this is where I died a lot. The Kracko Jr. and Kracko fights are completely different, and they're a lot harder. Thankfully, this segment is still pretty much the same, so you can very easily get a Maxim Tomato for free. Well, the Gordos do move a lot quicker. And this room's basically the same. I'm surprised they didn't actually change this so that the tiny little stars falling from the sky didn't fall more frequently. Although I did still manage to get hit by one. Oops. So there's a couple traditions in just about every single mainline Kirby game. One of them I forgot to point out and actually go into in the first playthrough, so we'll actually go and do it this time. Very frequently, the moon in the background will be an entrance, like that one. And entering the moon sends you to the secret room where, yeah, there's a lot of Gordos. Thankfully, when there's a lot of them on screen, the game slows down, so it makes it a little easier to avoid them. And as long as you're in a free fall, you'll be able to catch up to the 1-up. And some Maximum Tomatoes, but a little too dangerous at that point. If you're in that area in the normal game mode, I believe there's actually 2 1-ups to pick up and not just 1. But yeah, the Krakow fight, completely different this time. Spits out bombs at you. Also will charge whatever corner you're hiding in. This isn't really a pattern, he just randomly decides to either charge you or drop a bomb, so you can't really rely on thinking like, okay, he's gonna drop a bomb, then charge me, repeat. Because sometimes he just wants to charge you a lot. But thankfully, once you know his routine, it's not too bad. I actually think Krakow Jr. is a little harder than Krakow. Okay, so it's already the final level. Of course, it just comprises of refights of all the bosses we've seen. Since by this point, you know, we've seen the normal and hard version of the bosses. We're just going to skip the bosses, since we've seen them a lot, and we're just gonna go straight to DDD. Because, he's pretty tough. He has a ton of health. On top of having a ton of health, he's just more aggressive. Like, he's just fast, and he jumps around a lot more, and once he's done jumping, he immediately starts running at you to tackle you. He's just rough. And he's got so much health. It takes a while to wear him down. And this also brings up a little, like, just a behavior of Kirby's physics that comes into play in this fight a lot. So when you are flying as Kirby, if you know, spit out, puff out all the air so that he falls to the ground, based on how high you have fallen from, you might take a while to recover, because, once you fall from, like, anything greater than, like, halfway up the screen, when you hit the ground, Kirby bounces off the ground, and then, you know, recovers, and he can move around normally. And during that small time when Kirby is bouncing off the ground, you can't, like, jump again or suck anything up, which means while you're still controlling yourself bouncing off the ground, it just opens you up to getting hit. Especially with DDD moving so quick, it's easy to get hit. So you kind of have to make sure that you're, you know, falling to the ground from a small height. And with that, that's the extra game mode. We'll go through these credits pretty quick. They're the same. Or rather, this first part is the same. Because afterwards, you actually get a little extra bonus bit that shows you all the enemies. It gives you their names. They got Bronto Burt wrong. With Bront Burt. From what I recall, pretty much all these names are the names these enemies still have. I don't think there were any really weird translations of any of them that got corrected later on. Although a fair amount of these enemies don't pop up in later games, although I do remember Mumbies. Mumbies do show up later. And some of these names are just straight up like what they were named in the Japanese version, like Kabu. Kabula. But yeah, that's Kirby's Dream Land. It's a great game, still, even though it's something you can beat in 20 minutes flat. even the extra game mode, like, it does take some tries to get through it, but it's still manageable. It's difficult, but manageable. But yeah, this game came out in 1992 for the Game Boy, and it is missing one of the main core features of Kirby games, which are the copy abilities. That doesn't get introduced until the next Kirby game, which actually came out less than a year after this game came out. It came out in May 1993, the next game. And at some point, we'll be tackling that, because that is actually the first game I ever beat as a kid. There's a special place in my heart for that game, because it's the first time I realized you could actually beat a game. Games had an ending. But yeah, upon beating extra game mode, they give you another code that gets you some extra stuff. And we'll take a look at that in just a few seconds. These codes you don't actually have to unlock. Like most Game Boy games back then, they couldn't save your game at all. They had no battery for that. So these codes, like, if you just knew about them, you could use them right away. You don't have to unlock them or anything. So yeah, that config mode it talked about. If we go over there, you can change some things. So you can change how much health you have. I believe this is actually your maximum health cap. So you can basically just do a one-hit instant death mode of Kirby's Dream Land if you want. But yeah, there's also a music sound test, which is rad when it was 1996, and you couldn't look up this music on the internet very easily to listen to it because it was your favorite music in the world. So back then, sound tests were great. But yeah, on top of that, you can also change how many lives you start with, and yeah, make it even harder if you want. But that's Kirby's Dream Land, and sometime in the future, we'll be taking a look at Kirby's Adventure for the NES. The first game I ever beat. It's a great game still. Thanks for watching, see you later.